took her, I guess I'm starting a new, this must be video number 2. So for those of you who got to the end of the first one, I don't even know if I'll post this, but my camera just notified me that it has started a new video. Maybe this will be multiple videos, who knows. Anyway, I think I just need to get it out of my system. But I was trying to say before that happened, before I got this little notification on my phone, I think that my sister had taken my niece out of therapy to protect herself from being discovered to be an abusive mother. And so I was like, you, sis, need to go to therapy. My niece needs to be able to continue going to therapy. Like I was worried about her having someone to talk to. And my sister was just not budging. And so I had to write a letter to CPS. And this is the thing. The system is broken. It's very broken. So I don't even know what they did, But those are the powers I knew to be available to me at the moment to ensure any sort of safety and well-being for my niece. So that's what I had to do. So I think that, my sister saw me becoming homeless as an opportunity to kind of seize upon and make me look crazy. Because when people become homeless, I think there's automatically an assumption, well, it must be an addiction problem. You're prioritizing some sort of addiction over having stable housing, or you are mentally insane and incapable of giving yourself housing stability, or all of the above, or you're lazy. But in any case, I think that, the tendency is for people to make negative assumptions about people who have become homeless. And I think my sister used that as an opportunity to exploit and to sort of like get back to me and be vindictive about the fact that I had tried to protect my niece. Even though I really went out of my way to try to avoid evolving child protective services. I didn't want to have to do that. But my sister, in February, she wrote a letter to a judge saying I'd talked to her about living out of my car. And that was one of the things that she put in there, in addition to the fact that I don't like using pharmaceuticals, which I use pharmaceuticals probably every day, like ibuprofen is a pretty common one. But I do tend to look for a natural cure. Like if there is a natural cure for something, like there are lots of great natural cures, turmeric, coconut oil, it's like, why not use something that has zero negative side effects that also clearly works? Like, to me, that's just a logical point of view. But in addition to that, she put in something which I realize now probably wasn't a real memory. So I understand that she may have thought that I was off in my thinking or whatever, but there was no indication at all, based on one memory that I'd told her, that I was any threat of harm to myself or others. The last conversation we had before this was about Subway sandwiches. It's like, I don't know, there wasn't. She wrote a letter to a judge in the county where she had found this motel for me, which was I was very isolated, and distortions of the truth, making it seem like I was not mentally stable because I wanted to live in my car. And she was like, well, it's too cold to live in your car. Yeah, it was cold, but what were my options at this point? And I thought, life is tough sometimes. Lots of people do go camping in the winter. It's a real thing. Humans have been exposed to the elements for a long time now. But, instead of saying anything to me like, hey, Gabby, I'm concerned with your mental health, which she wasn't, except for wanting to make me crazy, I think. Like, she could have said, I'm concerned for your mental health. Maybe you should go see a therapist and get evaluated. She never said anything even close to that. Nothing at all. Like, even about me wanting to live out of my car, she did say she thought that was too cold, which is why she offered to pay for January. And then she's like, well, Dad gave you this birthday and Christmas money. You can pay for February. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And I did. To stay in that motel. It wasn't like a long-term solution, but at least it did get me through the colder months of the year to be indoors. But she wrote a letter to this judge, and just based on what she said alone, without any fact-checking or consulting with me or anything, the judge signed off. I didn't even know that this was possible. I used to work as a nursing assistant at a psychiatric hospital for 3 years when I was getting my social work degree. Actually, I wanted, because my undergrad degree is not in social work, and I wanted to get some experience in the mental health field. And to be a nursing assistant there, you just had to have a high school diploma. So it's like really being on the front lines of mental health care, working in this was not just any psych hospital, it was also a state-funded psychiatric hospital, meaning they have to take the worst of the worst, because this is basically the last place to go, for patients who are too difficult for anyone else to want to deal with. So I knew that a lot of times police officers would bring people to admissions. I didn't work in admissions, but I was aware that this happened. But I always thought that these were people who had been observed, out in public being erratic, and that's why they had been brought in. So I didn't know that it was even a thing, like that someone can write a letter to a judge, and based on that person's word alone, the judge can sign off on this paperwork for the police to come and get you and force you to go in for a mental health evaluation, which is what my sister did. A judge signed off on it, and I was swarmed out of nowhere by 3 cop cars and an ambulance. And immediately the police officer, I have forgiven him since, because I understand that being a cop is not an easy job, and this was a task that he was given, and he was intent on completing his work task, which was to take me into this, mental health evaluation. I didn't respond well to it. He said, this will be easier if you just get in the ambulance, and that'll be more comfortable for you as well, rather than, us cuffing you and putting you in the cop car. Like, that was how he started it off. And I was just like, for what? Like, am I being arrested? Is there an arrest warrant? No, there's no arrest. There's no crime. There's no arrest warrant. But he kept saying, but here are the judge's papers. The judge has signed off on this. I have to take you, and you have to go. I feel like that was really his fixation, was I have to take you. Like, that was his job duty. And he wasn't going to, not, get to the end of his shift and not have done that. But how many taxpayer dollars were wasted on sending 3 cop cars and an ambulance to pick me up, when my sister could have just said to me, hey, Gabby, why don't you go get a mental health evaluation? So basically, I was trying to evade an arrest that wasn't actually happening, because there was no arrest. The cop was holding on to my door, and I asked him multiple times to release it. Then I turned my car on. He interpreted that as, well, now you are attempting to assault a police officer, and that is a crime, and for that I can arrest you, and now I'm going to take you because you've already had too many options. I was like, okay, well, if I'm being arrested now, then I will get out willfully, And he's like, no, you've already had your chance. It's like, since there was an arrest, which was like half a second ago, I have not had a chance to actually choose to go with you, because there was not an arrest before. Like, the whole thing didn't make any sense. Anyway, I ended up spending a week and a half in jail on something called a surety bond, which means that it didn't cost anything to pay the bond. The bond was $0, and my family members just had to sign me out in order to get me out of jail, which they wouldn't do. This was in the middle of February, so a week and a half of what I had spent my Christmas and birthday money on to stay in this motel was lost, and I was in jail for that time, which was very eye-opening. I met a lot of people from different walks of life that I would never have met and befriended before. So I got out of jail after the week and a half, because the jail was just like, really? Nobody's going to sign you out. They're like, we can only keep you for so long. Like, I overstayed, my time at the lodge of jail, Anyway, they're like, no more, there's no vacancy for you anymore, darling. We're releasing you. In any case, then I had to struggle to get my car back. This is when we're getting back to the Jupiter Uranus in the third house. Like, this has disrupted so many things. My sister kept my car from me. Even after I got out of jail, I had to fight tooth and nail just to get my car back. I'm just like, I had, once I got out of jail in February, I had a short amount of time. Like, I got my car back like maybe a day before my stay in the motel was up, and I couldn't afford to stay there any longer. It's very like erratic, effects on transportation and the living environment, the local geography that you're living in and things. But I got my car back, and then I didn't know what to do. I spent a week in a homeless shelter, which again, Uranus has to do with like, people from edgier aspects of life, or like unusual walks of life. Jupiter is like expansion of awareness. So I met people from different life paths than I ever would have met. The homeless shelter that I ended up in was in the same city where my apartment had been, actually. Decided to move back to that area, and I went to a homeless shelter there, which I didn't even know existed until I needed it. So it's like I became aware of so many different types of people. And for 4 years of living in this town, I'll just say it's Winchester, Kentucky, never made a friend. I was very isolated, which I kind of preferred, because I've had so many difficult situations with friendships that have gone sour. It's like, I don't know if it's me, if it's them. It must be me. Like, I'm the one who keeps having the experience. But I have Mars in the 11th house, by the way. Like, I need to be me. I need to be me, Mars. And when it comes to friends, it's like I feel driven to find people who have similarities and who are on some sort of shared, life path, or like have similar goals or interests. But at the same time, that need to come together with other people like that conflicts with my need to just do what I need to do for me, putting me first, which is what the planet Mars is all about. In any case, I have this experience a lot, and you can see, based on my natal chart, why I might be having that experience. But I just needed to isolate myself for the 4 years that I'd been living in Winchester so far. And then I really feel like a lot of why this was happening is God really wanted to redirect my life. I'd even thought about like living out of my car before. It's like a van. I basically have, a full-size bed nearly in the back. So that's nice with the 2 rows of chairs down. I put like a mattress topper on top of it. The bad thing that I don't have is a bathroom, but I think I guess I'll need to explain. Like, I lived in the homeless shelter for a week, I think, or maybe slightly more than a week. It just didn't work for me. It was nice to meet different people and like be exposed to people who have different life experiences than me. Although also same life experiences, but like people I never would have met before unless these sort of erratic, unpredictable events had transpired. My awareness was expanded. I learned a lot. I'm continuing to learn a lot, but the homeless shelter was not an easy experience for me for multiple reasons. For one, I am extremely introverted, and although I am glad to be like making friends now, and not to be so isolated in that way, like I couldn't sleep. I was like having extreme sleep deprivation at the homeless shelter. And, I'm grateful for what was provided for me there, but also it was a strange environment. The way that it was ran was a little bit odd, I'm just going to say. But there are great people there on the staff. Most of the people there on the staff. Towards the end, I had one staff member who had kind of targeted me from the beginning, keep like denying me a shower. Like there's one shower for everyone who lives in the shelter. And I just felt like, I'm going to be better off at this point living in my car. So starting in the second week of March, I began living in my car. And we still had lots of cold nights throughout March. So it was tough, but it was doable. You bundle up under, multiple blankets and cover up, and it's totally doable. I mean, the lowest temperatures were in like the low 20s at night. That's Fahrenheit, which is pretty dang cold. And I'm glad that we're past that. There have been some cold days so far in April as well, and also some hot ones. April has been a great mix of like, super hot and pretty dang cold. Back and forth, back and forth. It's that change of the seasons time. And I did have a cold for a little over a week as well, which I'm over, thank goodness. But I also, since leaving the homeless shelter, I got started a membership. I'm still able, thankfully, to earn money through doing tarot readings. So I can pay for certain things that I need to pay that aren't covered by food stamps. So I've got a Planet Fitness membership, which gives me a really nice place to shower, much better than the homeless shelter, actually. And I've almost never seen, except for the ones in Lexington, but here in Winchester, like nobody ever seems to use the showers. So I don't have to fight for shower time there. And I'm getting my health back together. Like I do feel like there's so many blessings. I've also started going to church again. And I feel like I really needed that. I needed a place to show my gratitude and appreciation to Jesus Christ for helping me to find peace in these difficult circumstances, because it has been rough. At the beginning of it, I even doubted the existence of God, which I've never doubted the existence of God. There was a time in my life really where I wasn't really sure who Jesus was. I'm like, is this a made-up person? Is he an actual historical figure or what? But I never really doubted that there was a God. I've always felt that there was some sort of creator or something. And then, becoming homeless and these circumstances of my life being so difficult, that's how egotistical I was, I guess. Like, there can't be a God because otherwise, I mean, like, as if God's sole purpose is to spare me from suffering. Like, there are people who have suffered, like, tremendously more than I have suffered. It's sort of ridiculous. And I think it was like somehow being reminded and coming across, I don't know, maybe it was just floated through my head one day in my misery. In life, there will be trials and tribulations. I'm like, yeah, I think that's like, might be my favorite Bible verse at this point. I just appreciate Jesus so much for not selling us on a lie. He's like, this is the reality. However, I can make this manageable. Like, you can learn to be at peace despite this difficulty. And even he himself wasn't at peace in every moment. Like, when he was facing crucifixion, he was in agony. And he cried out to God himself, asking if there was any other way. So he knows that we can't constantly be at peace either, and it doesn't mean that we're a bad Christian if we have a moment of turmoil or sadness or grief over our difficult circumstances, but he's saying, like, we can still get back to peace. We can still get to a place of peace. So anyway, I feel like I'm making friends through church as well, and anyway, I just feel like there are a lot of blessings. And ironically, I had thought about, there's the whole like trendy thing of like downsizing with housing that's been happening actually during the Uranus and Taurus transit, especially people wanting to live in tiny homes or adapting vans to live in. And it's like, like this sort of like nomadic, like fun nomadic, which is very Jupiterian, right? Fun nomadic lifestyle. And I thought about that too. I'm like, man, rent is just crazy. Maybe I should do that. But there were aspects of it where I was like, I don't know if I can handle that, like, but, Uranus came along and forced me to jump in the waters. And now I'm still adapting. So it's maybe 5 weeks now that I've been living out of my car. I still feel like I'm adapting sometimes, and sometimes I feel pretty adapted. Recently, in the past couple of days, I've realized, you know what? Instead of trying to use this as a goal to like get back up on my feet financially so that I can afford an apartment or something again, maybe I should just try to improve my circumstances of living out of a car, like being able to save up enough money to live indoors somewhere for the winter, either, through renting a room share from someone during the colder months, or, again, doing the monthly, even living at a better hotel than where I was before, like 5 months of the year, living in a hotel paying the monthly rate is still going to be cheaper than me paying a normal rent in an apartment for 12 months. And also I'm thinking about eventually if I could get one of those like service vans. They're called, what are they called? Anyway, they're taller on the inside. You can kind of basically stand up inside. Like in one of those, I could actually have a restroom inside. That has been like the worst thing about this experience is like, I have bladder urgency. My bladder is a little princess. She's not patient. So that has not been an easy experience. Like every time I go to the bathroom, it is in a public restroom. And then there have been some times when I've squatted, if I've been able to find the privacy to do so. And there have been times when I've just peed on myself. You know what? TMI, but that's one of the reasons why I decided not to purposely live out of my car and have that fun van life experience, was because I knew that part of it wouldn't be very fun. But I feel like, as this exact conjunction approaches, it's like it's expanding my awareness and my understanding of what the actual possibilities are. Like I kind of like the freedom in some ways of living in my car. It's nice to have the freedom of not paying a rent, because rent is outrageous. And it has become more so. It was already outrageous, and now it's just like even more outrageous. Also third house is like our neighborhood, and like my neighborhood is adaptable. I can live in Winchester today. If I feel like it in a couple days, I could go out to Lexington or like any other neighboring place. I could travel even further than that and just live out of my car, right? It opens up, it expands, Jupiter, the possibilities of my environment, third house, through this experience of unpredictability. And I have to be able to adapt and innovate, because every neighborhood is a little bit different. Every town, every city offers different things. I could go and stay in a town that doesn't have a Planet Fitness, so how am I going to shower when I'm there? I would have to adapt. I could still stay there for a few days if I wanted to, or even longer, but I would have to adapt to that part of it, right? So that's where the Uranus part comes in, like always finding innovative solutions to the problems presented by whatever the locality is that I'm in. So in any case, this has been very long-winded, but I think it has been nice for me to share and process. And maybe for those of you who are just interested in the astrology, like whenever I see a transit coming up for myself, I like to see what other people have experienced with that transit. But we also have to be aware that we're all going to have different experiences. Just because this is happening in your third house doesn't mean you're going to become homeless and have to live out of your car, but it just gives you an idea of the ways in which those symbolisms can play out for us. So anyways, thanks for letting me get all of this off my chest and, kind of speaking it all out loud. I hope someone out there maybe enjoyed it. If not, at least it was good for me anyways. All right, that's all for now. Bye-bye.